Right. So again, my business is called innergeniushealth.com. And today I'm going to be sharing about the healing genius inside you, thinking with nature to address just about any health issue. All right. So I'm in love with nature. I think a lot of people who are attending this are, right? And a lot of you may know that, in a forest, if a tree's struggling, other trees have ways of sending nutrients to help it out. So this is just one example of the majesty of nature. And sometimes when I'm learning, whether it's about the human body or any part of nature, biology or physics, I'm so touched by the beauty of it, by the poetry of it, that it makes me cry. It brings tears to my eyes. We're pretty majestic creatures in a pretty majestic world and a pretty majestic planet. So, and I think sometimes as a collective culture, maybe you don't individually, but I think collectively we sometimes forget that nature, it's not a location we go visit on a hike or a camping trip. It's what we are. We are nature. And, there's not an atom in the universe that we're not somehow connected to. So everything's connected. We hear that, but that's, that's a reality of physics, of biology. And one of the problems I think, in the modern, healthcare or sick care system is that we're looking through a pinhole at reality, and we're not seeing the big picture of nature. And so we need to expand our vision, in my opinion, when we're trying to address any kind of health concern, whether it's minor, there's like symptoms, like you feel brain foggy or headaches and pains, or maybe some belly fat, or gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, whatever the thing is, you get headaches, or whether you have like a really serious diagnosed health condition, medical condition. If we don't zoom out and zoom in and look at how everything's connected through the lens of how nature works, then we're not going to get to the root causes. We're not going to fix the problem. So I'm really trying to be part of a paradigm shift in how we think, really starting with how we think and letting that trickle into our daily thoughts and actions, our behaviors, our choices. And I know that when we're sick or have health problems, it can be really scary and overwhelming. And I know a lot of people who are really into natural healing get scared and they're like, I didn't want to take an antibiotic, but I didn't have another choice. And, there are times when, if you're going to lose a limb or an organ or die, yeah, you might need to take an antibiotic, but people aren't really aware of how many amazing antimicrobial plants there are that are just as effective or more effective because they don't harm our beneficial microbes. They don't damage our immune system, cause long-term side effects. So that's just one example. So when we expand this vision, I like to say from the micro to the macro. So we need to expand out and look at the web of life and how everything's connected, and then zoom in, to the molecular atomic level and see how it's all these different layers are all the same thing, and they're not separate. And so my academic background, in graduate school, I participated in a joint program with UCSF Medical School and UC Berkeley Department of Anthropology. Anthropology is the study of humans. It's very broad. And I was really fascinated with how the modernization of our lifestyle, while we've gotten all these fun toys and cool technology that's really neat, we've also kind of accidentally lost touch with some elements of our human nature, of ourselves as nature, and so much of that is leading to disease. So a lot of what I realized in graduate school is that we're not living in alignment with our evolutionary biology. We're not working with nature. We're not working with the whole of who we are and the world we're connected to. I also got to travel quite a bit. This is actually, this is a stock photo, but it's taken in Oaxaca. I spent some time in Oaxaca, Mexico. And so just traveling to different countries and learning about different cultures, talking to other anthropologists and researchers, reading a lot. It was really eye-opening to see how different humans, how varied our view of medicine and health and reality are, but also how we're all sharing this increasing exposure to toxins, core nutrients, stress, a lot of socioeconomic issues that are affecting people's health. And so I started to see a lot of patterns. So it was really eye-opening. And again, the takeaway that I really would like all of us humans to realize, because it does have the potential to change our lives, like it has for my life and countless clients, is that, like I just said, in mainstream health culture, we're missing the big picture of how nature works. We're not zooming in and out enough. I'm gonna give you some examples. Like one example is that if you get, people think, okay, if you're fat or you have body fat or belly fat, you should just eat less food. That's not how nature works. That actually is a formula. Calorie restriction is a formula for how to actually change the set point in your brain so your body will fight tooth and nail to keep weight on you. So starving yourself is actually the opposite of what you want to do if you have excess body weight. And that's a complex topic, but body weight is more of a hormonal issue. It's more of a microbial issue. It's a biochemical issue. It's an immunological issue. It's not just a calories in, calories out issue, right? Even just counting macros and that kind of thing, that's not enough. Another common misconception is that if you have acid reflux or GERD, heartburn, that kind of thing, you should just take an antacid. This is actually one of the more dangerous approaches because normally, in at least 90% of cases, if not more, according to research, people who have low stomach acid are the ones who are having the reflux because their lower esophageal sphincter, the valve between their esophagus and their stomach, isn't closing right. It's a valve issue. And that valve responds to stomach acid. So if your stomach acid is too low because of stress lowers stomach acid, also just wear and tear on your digestive organs through eating poorly, bacteria like something called H. pylori. All those things can cause damage to that valve and cause you to have reflux. And so then if you take something that suppresses acid even more, it's going to make you sicker because you're not going to be able to absorb nutrients, you're going to get bone loss, you're going to have more infections. And this can actually, if you look at the domino effect, it can lead to autoimmune diseases like Crohn's disease, colitis, and eventually colon cancer. And people even lose their colons and get colostomy bags. So, I mean, I think, reflux medications are one of the top two selling drugs, I think in the world, but especially in the United States, and it's also one of the most dangerous. This looks more like an Alka-Seltzer in this photo, but I'm talking about proton pump inhibitors and that kind of thing. But even if you took an Alka-Seltzer today, it wouldn't be the greatest thing either. So that's just one way of thinking. We think it makes sense, right? You have acid, acid reflux, I'm going to neutralize the acid, that'll fix the problem. But we're not thinking how nature thinks. We're not understanding the functionality of the human body enough to look at the big picture and see how to bring it back into balance. So that's just one simple but really important example. Then there's statin drugs. Those are cholesterol-lowering medications. So we have this belief if you have high cholesterol, that's a dangerous, bad thing. You should just take a statin. This is another huge topic. Statin is the other of the second of the, well, I don't know the order, but statins and acid-lowering medications, acid-suppressing medications are the top two selling and most prescribed drugs and top-selling drugs in the United States. And this is a very controversial topic. I've done so much research on this, and I'm not gonna, this is not the topic of this talk, but what's interesting to know is that there have been studies, like there's a study in Japan that studied thousands of women and showed that the women whose cholesterol went up as they aged actually had fewer incidences of heart disease or cardiovascular disease and actually lived longer and had better quality of life. Why we need cholesterol to make our cell membranes, to make our brain cells. Cholesterol repairs damage. The real culprit of heart disease is inflammation. And inflammation is caused by, junk food, lots of sugars and refined flours. Even gluten can cause inflammation of the lining of your arteries, that kind of thing. So really, heart disease is more of an inflammatory issue than a functional issue. And so lowering your cholesterol is actually very dangerous. And if your cholesterol goes too low, you can actually end up with something called neurodegenerative disorders or diseases. So these are the ones you've heard of are, Alzheimer's, dementia, ALS, MS, Parkinson's, that kind of thing. So it can actually be really, really dangerous to lower your cholesterol too low. And there are actually natural ways to lower cholesterol if you really wanted to do that. And there's a lot of history behind why we got to the number 200, and there are a lot of details to this, like particle size and density that aren't being measured, blah 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 blah. It gets very technical, but I think the takeaway I want you to have is that if you really look at how the human body works, taking a statin and lowering your cholesterol is not going to protect your heart, and actually statins increase risk of heart disease, and they really deplete your CoQ10. And actually increase your risk of all kinds of problems. So it's really, I consider this a very dangerous drug in my opinion, according to the research I've done for the last 20 years. Okay. Another myth is that if you have an unpleasant emotion, you should just numb it or avoid it. So that's very cultural. We don't want to feel pain. That's natural. I understand. You put your hand on the hot stove, you take it off, like, so I can understand why, I have uncomfortable emotions I would rather not feel. I understand the urge to turn them off. But again, your body's, it's telling you this for a reason. You're having this reaction. There's a reason. And often the reason is something going on in your gut or something going on in your brain. And usually it's actually both. So I call it top down and bottom up. So there are things you can do to rewire your brain and limbic system on your fight or flight response so that you're, not so inclined toward unpleasant emotions or negativity, or there may be changes we need to make in our life. Maybe that discomfort is telling us something it's pointing to something we need to see, but we can also just have, what's idiopathic, like depression, anxiety, from inflammation in our gut, or an imbalance of microbes or parasites can actually cause different emotions. So, even things like heavy metal exposure, lead poisoning, mercury, things like that. So, mold, toxic mold, all kinds of things. So, environmental illnesses, viruses like Epstein-Barr, Lyme disease, that kind of thing. So, it's important to know the root cause of why you're having an unpleasant emotion so that you can tend to that, as opposed to just covering it up and numbing it, avoiding it, often with chemicals that are synthetic that we didn't evolve to put in our body that cause side effects. And often psych meds will often, I'm not saying there's never a place for them, so don't take it wrong, but a lot of them have these things called paradoxical side effects, like anxiety meds can actually make you have panic attacks and more anxiety, or insomnia. Sleep medications can cause more insomnia and panic attacks, and antidepressants can cause suicidal ideations and aggression and that kind of thing. So it's just important to know there are natural alternatives that bring the body back into a balance, and also just letting ourselves feel our bodies. We have such an aversion in our culture to feeling, and I call it feel your way free. Sometimes your body just needs to be heard. Okay, so all these myths have something in common. So if you understand how the human body works on a deeper level, and I'm not pretending to know everything about how the human body works, no one does, right? But if you can just expand your vision and look deeper, you'll start to see that this kind of thinking of just covering up symptoms as opposed to addressing the root cause is the logical equivalent of your house is on fire, the smoke alarm is going off, and you think that if you just take the battery out of the smoke detector, it'll stop the fire. And that's not how it works, right? If you take the battery out of the smoke detector and you don't put out the fire, well, your house burns down, right? So the same is true of your body. So just covering up symptoms, especially with synthetic molecules that can bring the body into further imbalance, it's not only a blatantly inaccurate thinking, it's also very dangerous and can lead to a lot of really serious complications. So in our culture and mainstream healthcare, instead of working with the genius of nature, which is what we are, our current most widespread strategies are to try to conquer nature, just tell nature to shut up. So here are some of the issues. These approaches are not biocompatible. They don't work with our biology. They don't address the root causes. They trigger harmful side effects. They're made of molecules. Often we use things that are made of molecules that don't actually work in our human body, that our bodies have not evolved to know how to use. So they just don't, biocompatible means it's just compatible with biology, right? So I'm really such a strong proponent of well-researched. So I'm a big science person. I want well-researched remedies, but they need to work with our biology. And of course, natural remedies can have side effects too if they're not used properly. That's absolutely true. But in general, herbs, well-researched herbs are traditionally proven and scientifically proven herbs and that kind of thing really do tend to be more biocompatible and usually don't cause side effects when they're used properly. Well, actually, they may cause side effects like better health, happiness. Okay, so another thing with a lot of the way, standards of care, standard medical practice is set up is so many approaches are one size fits all, and they're not bio-individual, meaning they're not tailored to each person's unique biology and personality, psychology, genetics, that kind of thing. So now this can be true in natural medicine. I mean, I've known naturopaths that they just put everyone on a candida diet, or they, whatever, or there's like, a lot of people who come up with like, there's one right diet for everybody, and that's not how it works. Different people thrive in, with different foods and different, for example, glutamine, can be used to seal your gut lining, but it causes anxiety in some people. L-theanine can calm anxiety in some people and give other people more anxiety, right? So we're all different, and it's important to honor that. Some people are more sensitive to foreign chemicals than others. So we're all different, right? Also, one of the biggest issues I see in our culture is we have a culture of fighting fighting disease and not nurturing health. So we're going to fight a war on drugs. We're going to, fight a battle against cancer. We're going to destroy COVID, that kind of thing. We use this warmongering language to talk about how to address diseases that are really about a lack of nurture. Cancer is a disease of a dysregulated immune system. So are autoimmune diseases, right? So, and then we have this practice where we just try to turn off your immune system instead of re-educating it and helping modulate it or normalize it, or, let it come back into balance. And I don't want to get into a big thing on COVID, but to me, the biggest problem with COVID has been the comorbidities. It's also evolved in an area of high industrial damage to ecosystems. So a lot of pandemics, in my opinion, come from not treating the planet with respect and creating, we're disrupting ecosystems, and then this is creating a lot of diseases. And then we get angry at the viruses instead of really seeing how we're acting more like parasites than beneficial microbes, and how global warming is kind of like the earth having inflammation or fever, and COVID's kind of like, if you think about it, like the earth having an immune system trying to fight off parasites, right? And so I just really feel so much sadness for all the death and suffering and everything that's come from this pandemic, but I also really wish it could be a wake-up call for us to take better care of ourselves and the planet. So anyway, we have this culture where we've normalized neglecting our bodies, overburdening our bodies, stressing ourselves out, holding ourselves to impossible standards, unplugging from the essence of what we are and some of our most basic human needs. We have this idea of productivity that doesn't include pleasure and play. We shame sexuality. We eat poorly. And then in the process, we destroy the very ecosystems we depend upon for life, right? We also think it's honorable to forsake our most basic human needs, to be productive, we give so much away to others, to our jobs, our families, our loved ones, and we expect really unreasonable things of ourselves. We don't get enough sleep, we eat poorly, we don't really plan our meals and make what we eat very important sometimes. We don't move our bodies in creative and inspiring ways, or even enough at all. We just maybe spend too much time on electronics, or overtax our brains in different ways. Maybe we don't have the best tools for dealing with emotions that come up. Maybe we don't get enough hugs, or pet enough puppies and kitties, or whatever, or just get on the earth enough, or go outside enough. So, but then when our bodies say, hey, something's wrong, and to me, pain and discomfort is your body saying, please nurture me, please love me, I need help. And then we get mad at our bodies when we feel unpleasant symptoms. But this is just nature's genius way of begging for nurture. So anytime, I just would remind myself and remind all of you that when you feel pain, discomfort, negative emotion, that's your body's genius asking for nurture. It's not your body turning against you, it's your body trying to help you. And then we also think it's normal to expect doctors to give us magic pills to cover up symptoms. And covering up symptoms is essentially telling our bodies to shut up and stop asking for help. And that's not very nice. So in essence, we're pulling the battery out of the smoke alarm, and we're not putting out the fire. So over 90% of health issues are rooted in lifestyle. Now, there are purely genetic diseases, like cystic fibrosis, right? There are certain diseases that are purely genetic, and they really do need, there are biotech solutions that are saving people's lives, right? If someone's in an acute trauma situation, they're in ICU, they can't breathe because their lungs are filling with fluid, then you want some of those drugs and machines to save their life. So I'm not against modern technology or modern medicine, but where we fall short is that we're not handling preventative care, and we're not looking at root causes. We're not dealing with chronic illness in a way that's addressing root causes. And again, over 90% of health issues are lifestyle. And then there's a certain percentage that's genetic tendency. So there's something called epigenetics, meaning how genes get kind of turned on and off based on environmental cues and just our habits, our daily thoughts and actions, our lifestyle. So our lifestyle isn't just eating and exercising, it's sleeping, it's emotions, it's relationships, it's thoughts, it's beliefs, it's how we breathe, it's how we see the world, it's everything. So I just call it lifestyle our daily thoughts and actions. It's all of our habits, all of them. And so many of them are on autopilot. We don't even question them, but they can all be changed. Like, you know, we just have to rewire our brain. We just have to carve out a new path in the forest of our lives. So one of the most important things for me is to forget dieting and willpower and fall in love with nurturing health. Instead of fighting disease, nurture well-being. And if you fall in love with it, you don't need willpower. You don't need dieting. You don't need what we really need is education and self-love. We need to honor and cherish ourselves and be unwilling to hurt ourselves. We need to set boundaries with what we're willing to subject ourselves to and what we're not willing to subject ourselves to. We need to realize that we have so much more choice than we realize. And just, I promised to give a couple case studies. So the way I came into doing this with my life was this isn't what I planned to do. I planned to be a research scientist and a university professor. And that's what, I was in grad school planning to do that. And I had some health issues of my own. Like I had lost 50 pounds on accident because I moved to Spain and just kind of did what they did, which wasn't as healthy as I am now, but it was a huge improvement. And my body really thanked me by letting go of 50 pounds without dieting. That was a real eye-opener for me. I definitely, had struggled with a lot of anxiety and, digestive issues, things like that. So I was already interested in health for myself. But what really got my attention was when my mom got Crohn's disease in, I think it was 2003, something like that. And she almost died 3 times. One of the times she almost died was from the disease itself. 2 of the times were from side effects from her medications. And they wanted to take her colon out. And, I didn't understand. They said, she'll only have a normal life if we get that colon out. And I thought, what's normal about not having a colon? And so I just was determined, and I didn't even near what I know now. And I was just determined to save my mom's colon. I didn't want her to have a permanent colostomy bag. So I went on, I just had this feeling that we're not living in alignment with our evolutionary biology. That's why we're sick. I knew she was eating poorly. She was under a lot of stress. She wasn't moving. And I just thought that if somehow we could address those things, that it might move the needle on this disease and give her hope. And it worked. I could say I don't even know what I was doing. Like, I did research. I found books written by people who had healed themselves from Crohn's naturally. And she was able to get off her medications, and she's been quiescent or in remission since 2004. And she's 81 now. And so she's still in remission. And in the process, she's also lost 100 pounds and kept it off. She's reversed psoriasis. She had psoriasis over her scalp and face, and her dermatologist could not believe. We used the functional medicine approach. This was later. And she's had multiple autoimmune conditions that she's been able to get into remission. So I'm really proud of her. And she didn't think she could do it. She felt so addicted to sugar and certain ways of eating and had dieted her whole life. And she didn't think she was even capable of what she achieved. So I'm so proud of my mom, and she's my inspiration, and she's why I do what I do. And everyone who's ever worked with me and benefited, they can thank her. So here's some client case studies. So one was a yoga teacher with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So she came to me, her hair was thinning and falling out. She was gaining weight. She had fatigue, brain fog. She felt pretty bad. And she had kept a really busy schedule. And it was confusing because she really, she thought she ate pretty well. And, she meditated a lot. She did a lot of yoga. She was active. And so, it didn't seem to make sense to her, why she would have this autoimmune disease, right? And so we did a 2-prong approach. I love when people can work with an integrative practitioner. I love functional medicine or naturopaths. You have to find someone who's a good researcher and who stays up to date. And not every, just because you call someone a doctor doesn't mean they're good at what they do, right? So I like to help people vet really good practitioners, but also, again, the lifestyle medicine. That's what I do. I teach people it's lifestyle medicine. It's really finding the gaps, finding what we do that really serves us and keep that going, but then find where there are these things I call nurture gaps, the gap between what is needed and what we're giving ourselves. And, she just had more nurture gaps than she realized. So we did some work on reconditioning her gut, detoxifying, that kind of thing. But we also, just upgraded her nutrition, her rest, her sleep, and, her work-life balance, that kind of thing. And then her, they had told her she'd have to be on thyroid drugs the rest of her life. And she was able to wean off her thyroid drugs, and her thyroid started working again, and she stopped making antibodies against her thyroid. And so this has been years since, since this happened, and she's really thriving. And it was also fun because, you know, she got her hair filled back in, and, you know, she lost the weight, and she's just a beautiful, she was beautiful already, but she just became so much more vibrant. And then she ended up falling in love and getting married in her 50s. So anyway, she's still going strong. So it's just one example of what's possible. So these are a couple of, you know, as you can see, autoimmune conditions are near and dear to my heart, starting with what happened with my mom. And what they have in common is that instead of shutting down the immune system, we helped address the root of the immune system, which starts in the gut and the microbiome, are all the microbes that make up our body. And the microbes that make up our body outnumber our human cells. And we get more genetic information from our microbes. So if we don't take care of our microbiome, we can't be healthy and happy. They have so much to do with our mood, how we see the world. I mean, it's just really phenomenal. Like, we're really something called a symbiont. Like, we're like a cloud of microbes with some human floating in it. I like, you know, it's pretty magical what we are. And then this one's just kind of a case study number 2. It's a woman who, you know, who had been spending decades going to nutritionists and doctors, you know, having trouble, having weight issues. That was her primary preoccupation. But also, like, you know, a lot of people come to me with weight issues. But to me, weight gain, it's a call for help. It's your body saying something is off. Weight gain is not the disease. It's a symptom of imbalance, right? So the best way to lose weight isn't by focusing on the weight. The best way to lose weight is by healing your body, healing your gut, your microbiome, you know, detoxifying, balancing the hormones, you know, really dealing with stressors in your life in a loving, functional way. I mean, there's so many layers to this, right? You know, there's so many different things that can cause weight gain. And if we don't address them and we just starve ourselves and get in these cycles of yo-yo dieting or whatever, the more times you diet and yo-yo, the harder it becomes to ever lose weight. So she had been going to people who are focused on calories, or maybe just focused on carbohydrates, that kind of thing. And, you know, there is some value to looking at the quality and value and amount of carbohydrates you're eating, but that's just a small part of, you know, because it ties to blood sugar and insulin, which is a hormone, but that's a small part of the formula, right? So it's really important to really look at the big picture. And so anyway, she had been stuck for decades, and I actually worked with her fairly recently. And then, you know, we worked together, and she just the weight started coming off because we looked at this immunologically, we looked at it hormonally, we looked at it her microbiome, we looked at her digestive function, her nervous system, that kind of thing. So we hit it from all those sides, and then her body started changing. But it's great that she's happy she lost weight, but you should see the brightness in her eyes. She just looks different. She's more vibrant. Her moods are better. She's sleeping better. She has fewer aches and pains. Her digestion's better. Like, she's just vibrant now. And, you know, so anyway, that's just, I think, the message. You know, anyone out there struggling with your weight, please think how nature thinks, right? When you focus on weight issues, it's just a symptom of something. Focus on gaining health. Losing weight is a side effect of gaining health, at least long-term weight loss, right? Oh, and I lost 50 pounds a long time ago. Yeah, I did tell you that. So anyway, so I've been there with the weight thing, and I dieted a lot, and it never worked. All right, so case number 3. I love this story. So this woman worked in the medical field, and so she'd always just done conventional medicine. She ended up with breast cancer, so she did chemo and radiation. And chemo can damage the mitochondria of your cells, including your heart. So sometimes it causes something called cardiomyopathy. There are a lot of different kinds of cardiomyopathy, but she had something called stiff heart syndrome, where the tissue, the muscles of her heart weren't functioning properly. I kind of like to think like an old rubber band that won't kind of stretch and move. It's a little oversimplification. But anyway, if your heart isn't pumping properly, then your kidneys don't work right, and your kidneys manage fluid, so your lungs can fill up with fluid, and then you can drown in fluid. So this happened to her almost, but she happened to be working in a hospital, so she was very close to an ER, so she lived. So they, you know, it was, so I don't know if you guys know what ejection fraction is, but it has to do with how well the heart's pumping. And it should be like 50 to 60, something like that, and hers was 20. Which is really, 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 really serious and life-threatening. So she had to wear a defibrillator vest, meaning that it would resuscitate her. So she came to me, and she said that up until meeting me, that she had been a food sociopath. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, before I would put anything in my mouth and I would have no remorse. And so she had actually already made some good strides on changing how she was eating. So we did a lot of work around regenerating the mitochondria of her cells, of her heart, and all her cells that were damaged by chemo. We did work on her gut and detoxification, her lifestyle, dealing with trauma, dealing with stress, dealing with emotions, dealing with like just all these different layers. And she went back and, you know, that she was doing better. So they told her she took the vest off. That was her first milestone, very exciting. And then a while later, she got an echocardiogram and her ejection fraction was up to like 30, which was a huge leap in the amount of time that, you know, she had been working on herself. And this girl was doing everything. She was implementing everything. Her follow through was impeccable. Her attitude was beautiful. Like she's an inspiration to me to this day. And, you know, and so then she just kept going. And then she went back and it was up to, I can't remember what it was last, it was something like 40. So she's a very recent client. So she's still going, she's still making improvements. So I'm curious to see where this is going to go. But by the time she got to 40, they told her, oh, one of the things I didn't say is that, you know, they were thinking about having to surgically implant a defibrillator. And then she was potentially maybe going to have a heart transplant. And that was, you know, what she was looking at. But because she made all these changes and her body started regenerating itself and healing itself and her heart started coming back online and working again, they told her that, you know, she's not going to need a heart transplant or defibrillator. And so this is what's possible, guys, when, you know, when we think of how nature thinks. So when we commit to looking at the root causes of an issue, and finding solutions that are biocompatible, meaning they work with our biology. When we find solutions that are bio-individual, that work with our individual biology and psychology, when we nurture well-being, then we get to experience some pretty cool things. For example, we decrease our disease and disability risk, and we experience an increased probability of vibrant, able-bodied aging. So think about it, especially if you're young. When you're young, it's hard to imagine, you know, like not being continent, like having to wear a diaper or not being able to walk or run or climb stairs, or, you know, there are just so many things that happen to people. And in this country, we have the shortest disability-free lifespan of any developed country, meaning that we get disabled and sick at an earlier age than any other developed country. We also have the shortest life expectancy of the most developed countries, like, you know, in Europe and Canada and Japan and, you know, Australia and New Zealand, South Africa, all those things. So anyway, there, you know, we really need a wake-up call. And so anyway, so as amazing as it is to decrease our risk of autoimmune disease, heart disease, cancer, disability, depression, anxiety, you know, even psychiatric disorders, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, you know, you go on and on, kidney failure, liver failure, heart failure. Like, as much as that's amazing, there's so much more that gets to happen when we nurture health from the root cause, thinking how nature thinks. Because we are nature, we're inseparable from nature. The same sustainable choices that optimize our health are healing for the planet. And vice versa, anything that's healing for the planet is going to be good for human health, right? So we are in a symbiotic relationship with all of existence. So, you know, I think we know if we really focus on soil integrity, microbes in the soil, of like having really high quality soil that we grow food in, and we protect ecosystems, and we have ground cover so that we can sequester carbon, or if, you know, we raise animals in ways where they are actually moving around grazing and regenerating, you know, land that is turned into desert. You know, these are just a few examples of not only do we reverse damage to the planet, but we actually reverse damage to our bodies, because when we consume those products, then it has a completely different biological impact on our body. Also, monocropping is a huge deal. Even if you're vegan and, you know, you're just doing, you know, we still have a problem with these huge fields of soy and corn, and, you know, that are there's too much exposed soil and not enough crop cover, and so that's part of the, you know, global warming thing too. So yeah, so I think you guys, anyone who signed up for this, probably preaching to the choir here, but it's just so important to know that we're not separate from nature. It's so important to look at the root causes of illness. If it's sometimes it's really overwhelming to try to figure that out yourself. That's how I ended up doing what I do. I'm just really good at researching and becoming sort of a health detective. And you know, like I guess one of my gifts is helping people navigate complex health situations and find their way out. And what excites me about that is that, you know, sometimes it can seem like when we have a health problem that it's an end to well-being, but when we really commit to addressing root causes, to nurturing ourselves, and even if you have like some kind of purely genetic disease, the more you take care of yourself, the better your longevity and outcome. And so, yeah, so I just can't emphasize enough that when we take care of ourselves, we take care of the planet, we address the root causes, we think like nature, we live in alignment with our evolutionary biology and our psychology. Because our mind and emotions are extensions of our body, they're not separate, then we experience more energy, more confidence, more calm, more joy. Everything gets better, right? And I think a lot of times we talk about, you know, the mind and the body like they're separate things, like the Cartesian split, you know, it's thought of in philosophy, and it's not true, because every emotion has a chemical biological correlate, and every chemical exchange in your body, everything that's happening in your cells is creating sensations and emotions that we interpret, you know, and they become thoughts, and then they feed into our habits and behaviors. So there's no separation between our minds and our bodies. There's no separation between any of us or anything. So, so just in a nutshell, when our health changes for the better, so does our whole life. And so I just want to encourage people, whether you have health issues now or, you know, they come up at some point in your life, I think it's important for us to be educated and prepared to change how we're thinking, and to really know that there are probably a lot of options that you may not know about. And so, you know, it's really important to find people who are good researchers and who can, you know, think outside of the box, and to not settle for something that's not working for you. So if you go to a doctor and they're really open-minded, they treat you like a whole person, they're humble, they listen, they're there in service to you, and they don't talk to you like you're a crazy person. If you want to, you know, do some kind of lifestyle work and be a little more conservative with the use of medications, unless you need them because of some life-threatening situation, sometimes you might need them as a stopgap until your body can catch up naturally. You know, then that's a good doctor, whether they're conventional or naturopath or whatever. I recently met a functional medicine doctor who wasn't very nice. You know, wasn't very kind, wasn't a good listener, may have known a lot intellectually, but wasn't really good at healing. So, you know, that can be an issue in holistic medicine too. And no one's perfect, right? We're all human. So, but just remember that anyone you go to for health consulting, whether it is a doctor or a chiropractor or a naturopath or an acupuncturist or a health coach or any kind of consultant, lifestyle medicine, any of that, if that person isn't looking out for your best interests, if that person isn't listening to you and caring for you and humble, then remember, they work for you. So a lot of people I notice believe that they have to do what the doctor says. And a lot of times there are doctors that use kind of scare tactics, maybe because they're even worried for you and they really believe that what they're doing is the best thing for you. Just know that all medical professionals are your hired consultants. They work for you. It's your body. You have sovereignty over your own body, and you're the boss of you. So don't be afraid to exercise your sovereignty. Yeah, and you know, that's my little spiel. And just kind of in closing, just that reminder that every time we push against nature, it's always a losing battle. And they seem in the moment like, oh, I stopped my reflux, or oh, I feel a little better for now. But if we don't work with nature, if we don't listen to our bodies that are crying for help, if we don't give them the nurture they need, more damage is coming. So pushing against nature, always a losing battle. Aligning with the genius of nature, which is what we are, is always a win-win. So the cool thing is we get to vote on the reality we want to create with our moment-to-moment choices. And yes, some things may happen that we don't plan for or consciously create. I understand that. But, you know, I still say that we have so much more power than we realize. We're so much more powerful than we realize. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you today. Thank you for joining me. Thanks. For sure. And back to Karen.
Tracy, that was so good. Thank you for sharing your beautiful wisdom. I totally agree with you on those aspects of remembering to where we come from and how we can really listen to those aspects of ourselves, because they really do tell you if you take the time to really listen.
Yeah, it's like our bodies have a language that we were not really taught. And it can be confusing. Like, what is this sensation trying to tell me? It can be a process. So that's why it can be great to have professionals who are really compassionate, good researchers, think outside the box. And I think, one of my concerns about, mainstream medicine, I love so many doctors and nurses, by the way, so many friends in the medical profession. I respect them so much. They work their butts off. Sometimes I feel sad. Sometimes I feel sad they're not given, better tools and better working conditions. It makes me sad because there are so many good people, so many smart people. So yeah, it's just, just having tools. And one of my biggest concerns about medicine that I think needs to evolve and change, and I hope it will, is that it discourages innovation. It discourages out of the box thinking. It's very groupthink, and if you don't think like everybody else and do it, follow the rules and da 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 da. And some of it really is based in safety, but some of it's really based in economic interest and social control of a certain economic profit. And it's not a conspiracy theory, it's just business. It's just kind of human nature. It's a little bit of the shadow side of humans, and so, but for us to claim our power, and that we can't afford to wait till pharmaceutical companies decide to play fair. We can't wait till all the doctors become open-minded, or all the big food companies stop making junk. Like, we get to vote with our dollars, we get to vote with our thoughts and our emotions and our behaviors. And so I just think collectively, just like we're made of a collection of cells and microbes, that they're a symphony of cells that together create the music of our life, our reality, right? And so if we as humans decide to start voting on a different reality through our daily thoughts and actions and purchases, and educate ourselves and expand our thinking and shift the paradigm in each one of us, then collectively that genius of nature just grows, and things change. And so I'm feeling optimistic that that's the direction we're headed in.
Yeah. It's getting out of that fear of evolving, I think, too. Sometimes you just gotta,
Yeah, and it can feel scary to do the not mainstream thing. And there are alternative health strategies for cancer and all kinds of different things that I do think are dangerous and not well researched and not based on how nature works too. So I just want to be really clear on that. So that's why it's important to really get good resources. But thank you for inviting me to participate, Karen. I really appreciate it. And I really admire all you've done for your health and your well-being, and what a bright light you are. So thank you for sharing that with everybody.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Nice.
Aloha.
Aloha.